Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Rubbish Talk Podcast with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Alicia Campbell.
Welcome back, Alicia. So what have we done with Jane? Have we abandoned Jane, or is Jane?
Yeah, I think Jane's going to be getting a bit upset that she's missing out on all the news and all the guests that we're having on.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Jane is busy working again, trying to get my diary aligning with Jane's diary, and the guest diary has been slightly challenging. So we have got Alicia along today to stand in with myself, who did an excellent job last time. So our guest today is Pam Walker. And we'll do a fuller introduction of Pam at the end of the news items, as always. So I think, first of all, you're on a Halloween theme, Alicia?
Yeah, so we've got some news this week surrounding pumpkins. With it coming up to Halloween, we thought this was quite on trend. So this actually comes from a company, an organisation that we've spoke about before called Hubbub. And they are an organisation that try to inspire good environmental actions. So they have recently brought out some new statistics surrounding the waste of pumpkins at Halloween. As we all know, at Halloween time, it's common to buy a pumpkin and carve it and have pumpkins sitting around the house. But actually, after the pumpkins have been carved out, a lot of the time they just go to waste. So it's actually over 15 million pumpkins that go in the bin each year around Halloween, and that is £27.6 million worth of waste. So this year, Hubbub has brought out this sort of new initiative campaign that they are launching, and it's called Eat Your Pumpkin. So they're trying to promote the idea that instead of wasting the pumpkins, we eat them, because actually I think it's something like 2 in 5 people don't know that you can eat a pumpkin, which is quite interesting. So this year, instead of throwing your pumpkins out, you should be trying to use the inside of them for some recipes. And Hubbub's actually brought out some video recipes and some suggestions of things that you can make, some foods and stuff that you can make out of pumpkins. And they're also trying to encourage us to paint our pumpkins instead of carve them. So that's kind of some ideas for Halloween, but also keeping in mind the waste side of things.
Well done to Hubbub, and as usual, we'll put the link up in the show notes. I actually remember the days of, and Scottish people probably remember this better, that a pumpkin in Scotland never used to exist. What you used to have to do is carve it out of a turnip, and if you've ever tried to carve a turnip, you were usually there for days trying to make a lantern out of a turnip. So if anybody does still carve a turnip, we'd love to hear from you, because I think that's a bit of I think most people take the easy option and go for the pumpkin. So there you go. Anyway, moving on. What else have we got? So environmental charity Keep Britain Tidy has published some findings about new research that shows that 85% of people mistakenly regard recycling as waste prevention. So this is what we've been banging on about since we started these podcasts, that everybody thinks they're doing a good deed by recycling, but in reality, if you don't want to produce a waste pumpkin, don't buy the waste pumpkin in the first place, and you cut down, the prevention is better than the actual recycling. So Keep Britain Tidy have published some research and are looking at how they can try and sort of raise awareness about this. But to be honest, that's a pretty sad statistics that 85% of people are not aware that, reducing waste, reusing waste is better than actual recycling. So it maybe suggests we've been wasting our time for the last 20 years trying to get that message across. So anyway, we'll put the link, as usual, we'll put the link to that article up in the news items.
Okay, so next looking at the recycling of batteries. So battery compliance schemes have combined together to launch Battery Cycle. So this is a national network of 30,000 collection points for unwanted batteries. And the aim of this is to try and raise awareness for battery recycling. Often another misconception, I think a lot of people don't know that you shouldn't be putting your batteries in your normal waste bin. So this is to try and get people putting their batteries in the right place and getting them recycled. So this organisation, this scheme is going to be offering an online locator for people to find where they can recycle their batteries. And there's going to be some partnerships with supermarkets, retailers and local authorities to expand on the points that the public have access to. Another part of the initiative is that every battery recycled, Bat Recycle, will fund community projects designed to educate on and increase local access to the environment.
There you go. And they've got a promotional character called Battery Bob, I believe.
Yeah, that's part of their digital marketing campaign.
So look out for that one. But no, we've talked about this plenty before about batteries and the risk to batteries. And in fact, later on with the interview with Pam Walker, we talk about a pretty devastating fire that they had up in Aberdeen that is suspected to be from a battery. So really important topic. Don't put batteries in your residual waste. Make sure you take them to recycling banks, which are generally located in supermarkets.
So next, moving on to the banning of wet wipes. So recently the government has brought out this plan to ban wet wipes containing plastic. It's a key measure in the UK government's plan for water. As we know, there's a lot of wet wipes still being produced that contain plastics, and when these go into our drains or down our toilets, it can cause a lot of problems and blockages, and it can just be really bad for where they end up, and they can get tangled in things, and obviously the microplastics getting released into the water and into the sewage. The ban forms part of the government's ongoing work to ensure that there is more investment and stronger regulations against wet wipes, and there are a lot of companies who do have alternative wet wipes which don't contain plastic, but there are still a lot of companies who have wet wipes which have these plastics, and people are still putting them down their toilets, and they're ending up in places that they shouldn't be, and causing a lot of issues.
So the bottom line, this issue's been going on for a long time, the sewage sector. So a lot of people don't realise there's plastic in the wet wipes, and obviously if they go into the sewage system, they don't degrade in the same way as a paper tissue does. So the huge issue for the sewage treatment network, huge issue for blocking of sewers, and really a big environmental issue. So this is a consultation to say, should we be banning wet wipes that contain plastic? The bottom line is, if you do use wet wipes, check the packaging. If they've got plastic in them, they should not be going down the toilet. They should be going in your residual bin. Next, so that's one consultation coming out. Second consultation from UK government is one about creating a smoke-free generation and tackling youth vaping. So this is the what Rishi Sunak announced at the Tory party conference about. If you were born after, I think it's 2009, you will never be allowed to legally smoke or legally buy cigarettes. So that age will keep increasing. So that the consultations for that, and they've also added into that things about vaping. I have had a quick flick through. I've not had a decent look through it, but it doesn't really. I would suggest it's not going as far as banning vaping. It's just looking at certain restrictions and things through it. So certainly, if you feel strongly about smoking, vaping, it's certainly worth having a look at the consultation. I was getting annoyed with somebody at the gym yesterday. I was in the changing rooms, and this guy, young lad, is vaping in the changing rooms. And I asked him to stop, and he looked at me as if I had two heads, as if I was I'd caused him some great offence. So we've talked plenty about vapes before, but now's your chance to feed into a government consultation. So I think that is all our headline news items for this week. I think just a couple of little things from ourselves.
From Albion. Yeah, so we've noticed a little change in the demographics of the podcast. I was having a little look at our stats, and it seems to be we're still growing in the younger age bracket. So We've seen a really big increase in 23 to 27-year-olds and 28 to 34-year-olds. So there's really not much a difference between the listeners now. So it's good to get some younger people listening to the podcast and getting them involved and getting involved in the conversation. So if anyone does have anything that they would like to bring on the podcast or any suggestions and topics or anything, we're quite happy to hear them. And you can submit things on the Rubbish Talk website if you have a kind of important topic you'd like to raise or something for us to discuss. And Alistair, I think you've got a little bit of news on that, on the topic of a newsletter.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the change in demographics is down to the younger co-host in the programme. That's maybe what it's to do with. It's maybe that, but it is only a week. So, as you know, we take the links and the items we talk about, and we do show notes, which go out with the podcast. But what we are looking at doing, we've not actually done this yet, is doing a fortnightly Rubbish Talk newsletter, which will effectively be the show notes, but it will be direct to your inbox. So I know sometimes I listen to things and I think, oh, I'll need to search that up, but then I never actually get round to looking at it. So we will be putting these onto a newsletter, and to sign up for that, what you need to do is go onto the Rubbish Talk website and fill in the wee contact form at the end.
And final little update on our e-waste campaign that we've had ongoing. CCL North are currently here at the moment picking up our e-waste that we've gathered over the past week, and we've had a great turnout. A lot of staff have been bringing in things. We've had, I think it was almost 20 phones that I counted, which was really good. Lots of phones, lots of old monitors from the office. We've had a microwave, we've had a toaster. So we've had a lot gathered from the e-waste day, and it's good that they're all being recycled responsibly and sent over to CCL North, and they'll put them in the right places so that they're not being discarded into general waste bins. So yeah, we've had a really good turnout from that, and thank you to all the staff for bringing in your e-waste and taking part.
It looks like they're all a bunch of hoarders by the looks of it, but
yeah,
I was a bit shocked when I went through the box of cables that I've managed to accumulate in my office. That was pretty substantial. So they are all off to CCL North, who will recycle everything to the best of their abilities. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest this week, Pamela Walker, who is the North East Waste Projects Manager up in Aberdeen, and she'll explain a bit more on that. Prior to that, she was a Waste and Recycling Manager at Aberdeen City Council. And for the waste people listening, you'll know Pamela is a well-known face in the sector, but she's got some interesting views about how we need to encourage the public to recycle, play their part a little bit more prominently. So without further ado, we'll pass over to Pamela Walker.
Hello Pam, we have you here today and we're going to be running through some questions with you. It's lovely to meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Alicia, thank you. Nice to meet you too, and thank you for having me today.
Okay, so first we're going to just kick off with some questions about your background. So it'd be good to get to know a little bit about the company that you work for and your experience in the industry. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about who you currently work for and just some background about the organisation.
Okay, yes, no problem. So I've actually just recently changed roles. So my job title is North East Waste Projects Manager, not to be confused with the North East of England, that is. The role is primarily contract managing the Ness Energy Project, which is the energy waste facility in Aberdeen that has recently been constructed. So my role is to represent the three partner authorities, which are Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire and Moray councils. I've only been in this role since early September, so very early days. I'm still very much finding my feet, but looking forward to the challenge that might bring. The project is to operate the energy from waste facility for another 20 years, and it's about to move into its operational phase fairly imminently. Prior to that, I guess I've spent over 30 years in local authority waste management, starting back in the long time ago with Kincardine Deeside District Council, pre-reorganisation, and then moved into Aberdeenshire as it was swallowed up in 1996.
So sorry, Pam, is Kincardine District, that's Fife Council now?
No. Kincardine Deeside District is the southern end of Aberdeenshire.
Right.
So yeah, Kincardine
I'm
Deeside.
thinking Kincardine Bridge here. I'm getting my geography wrong.
Yeah, you wouldn't be alone in that. So no, I've always been up here, Alistair. I've stuck here for all my life. So that's where I've been. And latterly, before I moved roles a few weeks ago, I was Waste and Recycling Manager for Aberdeen City Council.
And that was a pretty big role with quite a lot of staff, I believe.
Yeah, that was a really challenging role, really rewarding role. A team of around 200 people managing both the disposal contract and the collection service, and of course, not to forget the major fire that we had to deal with last year, which I think was perhaps, I don't know if that's a pinnacle, but it certainly is stuck in my mind in an event that we're not likely to forget in a hurry.
So that was, we've maybe touched on this. So this was a fire at the waste contractor you used. This is the one that had a really good video, the fire taking hold.
Yes, so this was our Alton's East facility, which was 5 years old, MRF, RDF, and it was also our depot, our base.
You're making the mistake that nobody's allowed to make, rhyming off acronyms without saying what they are. Hopefully most of the people listening do know what an MRF is now, but so
yeah, okay, I thought I was among friends.
No,
no, you're right, you're absolutely right. So yeah, materials recycling facility, refuse derived fuel facility. So it was where all of the city council's mixed recyclables went to be sorted and prepared for recycling and processing. And it was also where our residual waste was at the time tipped for processing and baling for onward transport to EFWs elsewhere, pending the Ness facility coming online. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it was the beating heart of Aberdeen City's waste service, including, as I say, the depot facilities, parking facilities for a fleet of around 60 RCVs, refuse collection vehicles, and the welfare and base for all of the teams. So when it went up in flames in a weekend, it was a fairly horrendous Monday morning.
We'll need to try and find that. Have you got I remember seeing that link. We'll need to find that link to put in the show notes. Actually, because it was quite it was quite an impressive video actually of how this tiny little bit of smoke then just went up really quickly.
Yeah, if anybody wants reminded.
Well, I think it's important. And did they ever work out with the cause? The suspicion it was batteries or whatever, but was that
no, I don't think we could never really put a finger on it because of the level of devastation after the fire. But yes, I mean, from when you see the video footage, I think it's probably fairly likely that it was some form of device, a battery of some kind. So yeah, unfortunate, but yeah.
And it's now been rebuilt, that facility. Is that work underway? Is it?
Yes, so there's been a lot of work done, and Suez have moved quite fast on the redesign and the rebuild for the MRF materials recycling facility. You know what it is now.
You're all right now. You're okay now.
I don't have to keep doing that. So yeah, the plan, we're hopeful that all going well and with a fair wind that the facility will be back in operation probably early 2024. So fingers crossed, it will rise from the ashes. In the meantime, everybody's parked up in porta cabins in the car park, which is not easy either.
It's difficult. When these things happen, it's really difficult, isn't it? It's really really challenging. Yeah. The thing with acronyms, Pam, is we're very much I think we're all quite guilty with, in the waste sector, rhyming these things off, expecting everybody else in the big bad world to know these things are, and we always try and make a point of it. So I'm not picking on you. we do it with everybody. In terms of your role, how did you get into waste management? Where did you start?
Well, so I'm one of these typical people that fell into it by accident, as most do. So I actually went to university initially to be a PE teacher.
Slight detour there.
Slightly different, yeah. So, but decided fairly early on that maybe that wasn't for me. So I was a dropout, came back home and needed to find a job. So pretty much the first job I found was with the council in what was then the compulsory competitive tendering days with the DSO. So they were running 4 contracts at the time, which was leisure services, grounds maintenance and street cleansing, refuse collection. Is that the 4? Yeah. So I hadn't got a job in the office. It was a very small office, there were only 4 of us, so you kind of got writing about everything. And I think in the initial stages, I probably assumed because of where I'd just come from, that the leisure bit of it would be where I would perhaps pursue a career. However, things didn't quite work out that way. I've never quite worked out why this happened or how it happened, but it happened. And waste became my specialism and has been pretty much ever since.
So who were your mentors, if you like, in that early days? Who were your
Oh well, there's a few real Kent faces, Alistair, as you probably know.
I'm thinking I probably know who it is.
I mean, the first few years in the district council, I worked with a few guys that weren't really waste industry people per se. But when when reorganisation happened and Aberdeenshire Council came into being, then I moved up to Inverurie. Actually, in saying that, I jumped over to Aberdeen for 6 months or so in the middle there and came back again before reorganisation. So I ended up in Inverurie and actually took the job that Duncan Simpson left long time ago when he moved to Valpac. So that was the recycling officer job in Aberdeenshire Council. And yeah, so good old George Niblock was my mentor extraordinaire at the time and was very much an influence in the early days, and perhaps was also the person who opened quite a lot of doors for me as a youngster back then, and was very good at pushing people forward to get involved in some of the more national stuff and be allowed to be exposed to things that many people are possibly not allowed to. So we have him to blame for me sitting here today in some guise.
And I noticed he's still trying to get his hydro scheme off the ground. I noticed he was pushing out to get the funding for his wee scheme. He talked about, he was on, I can't remember what episode he was on, but he talked about it in the episode George did. So
yes, he did. Yeah, I mean, I don't think George really knows how to retire, which is maybe not such a bad thing.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Any favourite roles through your career, or least favourite roles even, if you so wish? Any times you thought, oh, this is not great?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I think that the way that the industry is and the way the job is, there are ups and downs and lumps and bumps on all of the jobs. I think the standouts for me, I mean, that very first role, the DSO one that I talked about way back when, because it was such a small team and I was so involved with everything and we were located in the depot, I had a great time. I really enjoyed that and getting to know the guys and the supervisors. I organised their first Christmas party and did wonder whether that was such a good idea later when you have 50 bin men in a hotel, whether that was a clever idea or not. But they had a good time and there were stories to be told. Other than that, I think later on, the other project that perhaps sticks out was the Strategic Waste Fund time era, when the real sort of step change stuff happened when we brought in curbside collections. And Aberdeenshire had a fairly comprehensive Strategic Waste Fund bid that encompassed everything, the comms, the infrastructure, the recycling centres, waste minimisation, the whole lot, the whole shebang. And it was a really exciting time. We recruited a project team and made a massive change to how things were done.
Remind me, what was your area then? What was that Strategic Waste Fund? Did that cover Aberdeenshire, Moray and...
No, that was just Aberdeenshire. Well, it was just Aberdeenshire, which is a big enough area in itself. Although we did, as part of that, have a joint comms approach, which was really good and something I think that we've really lost over the last few years. Then the benefits of that were very, very clear across Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire and Moray. But the actual collection service, the on-the-ground stuff, was Aberdeenshire's fund.
Right.
But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. And actually, the pilot curbside scheme, we designed our own curbsider because we just couldn't fit with what everybody else could deliver. So we had a wee project, found a vehicle, put stillages on it, invented it, trialled it. You know, that stuff was a lot of fun, and I miss that.
Yeah. You do wonder, you do look back in that, I can't remember which episode we talked about it. I think it was probably Simon Glenn's one, but we talked a little bit about the strategic waste fund, and you do wonder if we've totally lost that sort of joined up, getting authorities to work together, you know, as a group rather than individual authorities, you know, to give a bit of scale to the contracts, to allow more investment and so on. We seem to have moved away from that quite considerably, haven't we?
Definitely. I think, you know, there have been a lot of funds that have come and gone over the years, and the Strategic Waste Fund, I think, was the one that really did make the difference because of the way that it was done and because of the holistic approach that it did allow, and it did include revenue funding most importantly, I think. And I don't think we would be where we are now without something that was as forward thinking as that. And perhaps, yeah, maybe there are some lessons that we need to go back and learn and consider whether there's some of the good stuff from that we need to bring back.
Yeah, it'd probably be interesting doing it now with the total change in infrastructure that's out there. You know, there's probably a lot more infrastructure than there was. Because I remember back in that sort of day, the big issue used to be, oh, we can't get a facility because we can't get planning permission and so on. And that I'm not saying that barrier is removed. It's still pretty tough sometimes to get planning, but you know, for a while, going back 20 years ago, it was quite tricky to get planning for a waste facility.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I wonder what would happen. I haven't really given that a great deal of thought, if I'm honest, but we are in a very different place to where we were 20 odd years ago. So it would be, it maybe is, you know, time for that next big step to happen.
So, Pam, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about your current role and what are the main things that you're trying to achieve? So, even kind of what your kind of day-to-day looks like and what your main focus is just now.
That might not take long because I've not been here that long. So
you're trying to keep the plant running for the next 20 years. That's the
you'll just be adjusting.
So the Ness project, there is a project team of 2 people that are managing this contract, myself and one other. So Pete Lawrence was in the role I'm in and has recently retired to take on other challenge in his life, and so the other post is a project coordinator role, and that person also left the service 2 weeks ago. So I'm kind of on my Todd right now. So
They've
things
left
are.
You on your own.
They have, yeah. I'm not taking it too personally, but you know, it's fine. If anybody wants a job, there may be one. So at the moment, I'm really trying to get my head around the contract itself, which is, as you might imagine, no simple thing. And also the administration of it, just to try and keep things running whilst we get the recruitment, you know, the usual stuff that's happening. So it's been a little bit of a challenging start. In terms of the project, so the three local authorities, I'm working closely with them. Clearly, I've got a fair bit of knowledge about both Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen from my history, so that's really helpful. And I was actually involved in the procurement process in the early stages of the Ness project, so I can't pretend I know nothing. I do know a little bit about what happened in some of the history and how things have come to be the way they are. But that said, I've still got an awful lot to learn, and I'm spending a lot of time at the moment flicking through documents and files and looking for stuff that sort of thing. But that's all good, and it's coming along, and we're making progress. The plant is up and running, the waste is being delivered, so things are good. The other side of this role, though, is also it does have a remit to consider whether there are any other joint opportunities between the 3 authorities, and that interests me particularly. So I haven't quite got my head around that yet, or had the space to really focus on that. But that I see as something else that could bring some added interest and added opportunities in trying to help the 3 councils to do things in a little more of a joined up manner if we can and where it's appropriate. So we'll see how that turns out.
It sounds like you're just adjusting to things, but I'm sure it won't take you too long. Would you say that through working in this industry, has it changed your opinions or habits outside of the workplace? And do you feel the need to kind of live up to certain morals? Do you kind of try and have an influence over maybe your friends or your family in terms of waste and the way that they kind of live their lives? Or
I think I've been here for so long that for me personally, it doesn't feel like it's ever been anything else. In terms of friends and family, yeah, I mean, I think for those people who work in local authorities, particularly in waste, they'll know that you can't really have a conversation about it before you turn into why can I not put this in my wheelie bin kind of stuff. That actually is the basis of where I think we're going kind of wrong. I yearn for the day when we no longer talk about it over dinner or in the pub, and it's just the normal thing that people do. Nobody talks about putting their black bin in their black bag in their black bin, but everybody needs to talk about what and why and how hard or how difficult or how they don't understand it. And that's what we need to be aiming to get rid of. Shouldn't need to be talking about it. It should just be the normal thing you do. So whilst, of course, if any of my friends are listening, I have no problem answering their questions, but I generally think that we need to get to a place where people don't need to be asking questions, and we don't need to be referring to a fridge on the magnet or a leaflet that comes through the door or a sticker on a bin. It should be fairly simple, fairly easy and fairly normal. And I know that's possible. My kids have grown up in a house with my husband who's also in the business, so they don't even ask the question and never have. It just goes there. So it's possible, but I'm also very aware that we've got a long way to go before everybody views it in that way. But perhaps if we aim that way, then we might have a different view on how we go forward.
Do you think we give the public an excuse too much? You know, everybody knows what food waste is. It's not that hard. We eat food. We know what food is. How hard is that to put in a food waste bin? But we seem to give them excuses not to do things.
Yeah, I think it's very easy for people to give themselves excuses not to do things. I know you'll find people will say things like, "Well, it doesn't go anywhere anyway. There's no point. What difference does my little bin make?" You know, they'll justify for themselves why they don't do it.
I was at dinner last week, Institute of Engineering Technology dinner last week, and had exactly that conversation with the guy that was sitting beside me. Oh, it all goes the same place. It all goes here, and I'm like, well, actually, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Yeah.
And you need to start listening to this podcast, by the way.
Absolutely. I think you know, the other side, we struggle quite a lot in councils to recruit staff. So I wonder if the answer might be national service for waste. Give them a few weeks on the bins, and then they'll maybe understand a little better why it matters.
Well, both of my children have worked for Albion, and they've both done waste composition analysis. So there's an introduction to waste for you. I don't think you've done one yet, Alicia. I think that's have you been yet?
I've been to see it, but I don't think I'll be getting involved. I don't think I could stomach that, Alistair.
Oh, it's I've heard some horror
stories.
It's a passage in life you need to make, really.
I'm quite happy standing in the sidelines.
There we go. Busy life, Pam. How do you relax? How do you get away from it all? Or do you?
Oh, I just sit in the pub. I used to play hockey. That was my thing. That was my sport. I used to be a hockey player. Played National League for a while. But when the kids were born a number of years ago, I kind of fell out of that habit and got a bit older and stiffer. So I've occasionally had a guest appearance, but I find that I pay for it quite severely for a wee while after that. So yeah, I run a wee bit, but nothing like you, Alistair, so I don't really want to talk about that. You know, the odd 5, 10k, and I've done one half marathon and then probably never again. But I run a little bit just to keep things moving.
What was the last one you did then?
Well, the only half marathon I've done is the Great North Run. I did that a few years ago, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, I have to say. Apart from there were far too many people at the start, and I underestimated my start time and spent the first half an hour running round people rather than running forwards.
The number of people that do these big races and put their start time in incorrectly is incredible.
Lesson learned. Yeah, and I'm also a member of friends of the neonatal unit in Aberdeen, the committee there, because my kids were born really early, a number of years ago.
Right.
So
Right.
get involved in a little bit of the kind of support there and fundraising and that side of things. So something a wee bit different from waste.
And kids old, or they still at home? Still
Yeah,
youngsters?
I have twins who are 16, so yeah, they're probably still in bed at the moment because school holidays
It's
here.
holidays,
So
isn't it? It's holidays.
yeah. So yeah, they're still here and doing fine.
Good.
All good. So that keeps me busy too.
We normally ask this question, but since you just moved role, you're probably going to say nothing. The next question is, what's next for you in your career? get to know this role, I think, is the
Yeah, it might be a
answer.
little premature to have a plan to move on just yet. I might not want to saying that. So yeah, I mean, I'm no spring chicken, I suppose, but this job I've only just getting my feet under the table, and my plan at the minute is to hang around for a wee while yet and see how things move forward. So yeah, no plans for the future other than the retirement plan on the horizon at some point in the next 10 years or so.
So another thing that I would like to ask you, Pam, is just if you would be able to share one fact from your job or sector that you think people don't know.
That's quite a difficult question, Alicia, because I think everybody knows everything I know. There's no real big secrets. I mean, working in the public sector, very much in the public eye and local authority, things are all out there for everybody to see and everybody to share. I suppose in the background, one of the things I have a little claim to fame on is that a long time ago now, but I was the person who installed recycling bins at Balmoral for the Queen.
Okay, that's an interesting fact.
So yeah, it was quite an interesting one.
Is she using them properly, or was she using them properly?
Well, yes, I think. Well, latterly I wasn't quite so close to it, but I think so.
Good. Well, that's quite a claim to fame, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so as well. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's, there's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun up there.
Yeah. So back to my favorite topic. How do you change habits in terms of the public, in terms of how they improve managing waste or improving recycling? You've touched on that already with they get far too many excuses not to do it. How do we change that agenda? To me, it feels a little bit like we've been trying to do the same thing for the last 20 years, and we've not really moved past that agenda.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think we've probably been a little bit circular where we really don't want to be being circular, and going round and round and round. I think I touching on it earlier, I guess, in terms of normalising it, not making it something that's special that only the Kincardine people do. It's something that everybody does, and it's part of normal life. But I do think that the awareness and the education and that drip effect, we've really gone backwards on that, and I think we've allowed people to forget about it and to forget that it really makes a difference. I think I often used to say, when I used to talk to community groups and things, that people would always have something that they didn't particularly like, or a reason, or something that would stop them participating. But I say to people, well, do what you can. If everybody does a bit and everybody does as much as they can, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you do something, then it collectively will make a big difference. And I think that we've lost that. I think there is this assumption that it really doesn't matter that much. And I think people live busy lives these days. They've got a lot more on their plates than what goes in their bin. And I think often we in the industry and in local authorities and others forget that not everybody has got the time and effort to think about this. So it needs to be simple, needs to be easy, and they do need to be reminded. The comms side of things is a particular area of concern, and it's been raised, I think, a number of times. I would say that the role that the Scottish Waste Awareness Group played a long time ago, around about the Strategic Waste Fund time, was one of the best things that happened in waste comms. It really did pull things together. It rationalised a lot of the terminology and the images that were being used, and it made it a little simple and easier for people to understand. And I'd really like to see some sort of return to that kind of approach, and also a much more planned approach, so that it's not, we just got this habit and we keep doing it. Alistair, you're right, you've just talked about, we keep going round in circles. We make a service change, we spend a lot of time telling people what to do, and then 3 months down the line we stop, and everything kind of reverses and relaxes and goes back into some sort of other place we don't want it to be. So I think we need to think pretty hard about what we're doing here and what it is that's going to make the difference to people, and think about what people do and how they respond. And I think people live their lives probably in a different way than they did a number of years ago, and everything's moved on, everything's faster, everything's quicker, the expectations are different, and I'm not sure that we're keeping up.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think I put out a bit of a blog post for last week's episode about the potential savings from, if you extract the food waste, you extract the recycle, and it's chunky numbers. There's big savings there potentially, but that means engaging with the public and getting them to do the right thing, or working out some way. It's either trying to incentivize them doing the right thing or disincentivize them from doing the wrong thing. But do you think it's funding that's is it funding? Is it no funding for comms campaigns, or is it a bit more? Is it not quite as simple as that? Is it? It's probably quite hard if you're in a council try to get funding for doing a comms campaign, for example, I would think.
Yes, in times of budget pressures and the like, it's often one of the things that does suffer first of all, and also just resources, the funding for the. I mean, nowadays, in fairness, delivery of these campaigns isn't as costly as it used to be because it's mostly done digitally now. So I think things can be done. I mean, there are costs, and if you do want to do other stuff, clearly there are things that cost money that need to be funded. I think also there's a resourcing issue in local authorities. I mean, over the years, the number of staff that there are to deliver a lot of this, as well as run the day service, as well as consider what the future strategic implications are, then it's really difficult to balance all of that, and people just don't have the time. The number of people I talk to in the local authority arena who really don't have the time to turn around in a day, far less think about how to do it. Everybody is firefighting far too much, and I think if we could somehow find the investment, and as you say, it's perhaps worth looking at this on a much bigger scale in terms of what the gains are financially in the longer term as well, and a little bit of investment in a few more hands to the pump could make a significant difference and fund itself in the longer term. But that's not the way that it's really being approached at the moment, I don't think. So what's happening at the minute is there's more and more work being piled onto the people that are left, and with the result that they do their best and the quality and quantity of that is compromised.
The thing I keep going back to, if we've got in Scotland as a whole, if we've got a food waste recycling service that only 20% of the population are using, we've got something wrong. We've done. We need to be going back and looking at that and thinking, well, if only 20% of people are using that, we need to, if this is the way, if we want to collect food waste, we need to actually look at, properly at how do we change that from 20% to 80% or 70% or whatever we're going to actually manage to do. Rather than at the moment we seem to just move on to the next thing. We move, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Rather than actually thinking, well, maybe try and optimize the service we've got already.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think there's an awful lot of stuff going on at the moment in the industry. A lot of it's very complex and it's going to take a long time to come to fruition, if some of it ever does, and if it does achieve what we need it to achieve. But I think let's not lose sight of we need to get the basics right first. And pretty much every local authority in Scotland now provides a reasonably comprehensive curbside collection service and a food waste collection service in most areas that are required. But as you say, they're not used. I live in a typical suburban environment of mostly detached houses, and I can walk out here on bin day and I would say probably you'd be lucky if it's 20-30% of people have a food carry out, and no excuse whatsoever in that environment. Slightly different in the more densely populated in the urban environments, but a bit more difficult there. But certainly we're a long way off. So there's a whole culture change. I think people don't think it matters, and they think it smells. And it always amuses me that people think the food waste is going to smell in the food carry, but it's not going to smell in the wheelie bin. But
it's amazing that, isn't it? It's amazing. And it sits in the wheelie bin for 3 weeks or 4 weeks rather than once a week. It's your favourite topic. your most favourite bit of industry jargon or acronym. And since you rhymed up about 10 acronyms right at the start there.
Yeah, I suppose this one's probably been talked about already, but the whole acronym thing amuses me and what we call stuff. You know, WUDS has got to be a cracker.
WUDS is the one, when that came out from SEPA, I was like, what on earth is a WUD? I was like, I had to Google it, and I was like, what, you know, if I were... do you know what a WUD is, Alicia?
Yeah, I would like to think so, since I wrote the blog on them.
Absolutely. There you go. So wait, I was hoping you were going to rhyme off there, so I didn't remember.
Waste upholstered domestic seating.
That's the one.
I mean, it amuses me. I mean, on the whole, I was thinking about this, and I used to work a long time ago for a wee while. When I left school, I worked in a US Navy base, and it was like working in Little America. And apart from they still drove on the right side of the road, thankfully. But, you know, paid in dollars, Americans. It was a really fun place to work in. I used to be really interesting how the American approach is to what they call stuff. You know, we seem to complicate stuff. I mean, WUDS is a very good example of that. For example, the equivalent of what I'd call the house and repair desk on this base, because it had barracks and housing, base housing and stuff. And they just called it the trouble desk. And I used to think, well, that's what it is. But if we called it the trouble desk in the council, I don't think we'd get the same response. You know, and being in America, I remember driving down a road and it was called Big Bend Boulevard, because it had a big bend on it. And, you know, I wonder what the Americans would have called WUDS, because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have called it waste upholstered domestic seating. It would have been old chairs and sofas from houses or something like that. You know, it's that's like, wonder what we could do. But so WUDS, yeah, WUDS is an amusing one. And do you have pops in your WUDS? There's a conversation starter for dinner.
I know. There you go. I like that. I like the trouble desk. Actually, I'm sure there's a few waste management officers think that their point of contact is the trouble.
Yeah,
the trouble
career.
thing. The problem nowadays, it doesn't just come at you from phone nowadays, does it? It comes at you from phone. It comes by email. It comes from all the various systems
and it
for
comes
communicating.
Quicker.
Yeah, and you get less time to. You're expected to react to it quicker and respond to it
Indeed.
quicker. So there you go. Well, thank you for that one. So we're going to give you a magic wand to sort the whole world of waste management out. Well, waste management in Scotland or Aberdeenshire, wherever you choose to sort it out. What would you like to see?
Right. Well, I think there is an answer here, and I think we need not to overcomplicate things. I think that what we need to do, Scotland's not a big country, it shouldn't be terribly difficult for us to get our heads together and consider what needs to be done. I think if I had a magic wand, I would reinvent something along the lines of the Strategic Waste Fund, I suppose, but the approach, rather, not so much the money as such, but although that's needed clearly, but the approach, look at holistically. What does Scotland need, particularly not just, I think there's been quite a lot of focus on curbside collection services and how many bins and how often they're emptied and where they're put. That's actually not the bit that's the difficult bit. Councils can collect whatever, whenever, however. That's been proven time and time again. What we need to do is look a little more cleverly at this. And I think one of the areas that we've been lacking in is a proper review and evaluation of what works and what doesn't work in Scotland, not what doesn't work and what works in other countries, what's not working here and what does work here and what do we need. A real fresh look at the infrastructure around recycling, particularly the sort and baling and transfer infrastructure. That's a real pinch point for councils. We have to do what we've got rather than do with what we want, and that's often the thing that influences how things are collected rather than what colour wheelie bin you've got. So I think if we actually took a long, hard look at this and went, right, okay, how can we deliver a service that everybody can participate in? What does that look like? And then work back from that and develop the infrastructure that's needed in the right places. And then we've actually got somewhere to go. I do believe that it's possible to have a consistent collection model in Scotland. It might not be the one that people particularly think it should be, but there is a consistent collection model out there that would work for both urban, rural and everything in between. So let's think about that quite hard. I think And I think when we make it easy for the people and make it simple, then the rest of it will fall into place. It would be a very long-term, would be a long-term plan. These things take years and years to implement, but I think at the moment we're in danger of continuing to operate in a fragmented way, and we end up in 10 years' time being exactly where we are now, and that's what we need to avoid. We need a long-term strategic view, build what's required, and then the authorities will be able to deliver. I'm 100% confident about that. If the stuff in the background is in place, then it's done. Sounds so easy, eh?
I like that. I think the consistent collection. Personally, I think it's madness that we've got different collection systems and 32 local authorities. Okay, we could maybe have 3 or 4 different collection systems across Scotland, but not 32 different ones, and that just opened to confuse the public in terms of them moving around and stuff. So I like that. I've not actually thought about this much until you mentioned right at the start the strategic waste fund. That was probably, when you think about it, that was probably the last time a sort of systematic review of the waste management infrastructure across Scotland was actually done. I can't think of any recent work that's been done to say, in Aberdeenshire, you've got access to X number of facilities, this is what they do. I can't think of. I maybe missed it, but I don't think there's been anything done on that sort of scale.
Not on that sort of scale. I think, there's obviously been the incineration review and that kind of thing kicking around of late, but not holistically, in terms of what's actually out there across there and what the capacity.
Not the sort of real practical, we've got a transfer station that can handle X number of tonnes, we've got a material recycling facility that can handle, X number. It was interesting. We did between ourselves and Nicky Suter Associates, we did some work for NHS Scotland, looking at their horizons from their boards and the waste types they were producing, and then looking at what facilities were locally available to them in terms of actually handling that waste. And it was a really, really interesting bit of work in terms of just trying to actually, because one of the things that's never talked about, I think, at the moment is a lot of the waste is moving quite big distances. The carbon impact of that is pretty significant. But we're worrying about carbon impact of taking plastic spoons out of the equation or plastic straws, and we're not thinking, well, there's actually waste coming all the way down from flipping Inverness to Dunbar.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's not really been looked at. And the other thing that I think we really need to do, and this is one of my other hobby horses, but you've given me a bit of a platform here, Alistair. So one of the other things I think we really need to do is look at a much more close analysis of recycling rates at the moment, because there's a focus on, well, this council's recycling more than that council, but we're lacking the understanding of why that is. And a lot of the funding is being pushed into curbside collection, but we haven't actually segregated out the performance of the curbside collection services versus everything else that the authorities do. And there's a significant amount of tonnage comes from elsewhere. What we really need to do is do a little bit of digging into that and work out what is delivering the best results and outcomes for curbside collection. Or is it actually that in certain cases, an awful lot of actuallys here, there's a number of we need to look at maybe there are lots of benefits, for example, from recycling centres. What's the tonnage that's coming from them, and are they more successful in rural areas than urban areas? Are they not? There's a wee project in there, I think, to try and establish what works, what doesn't work, and that would help us inform much better what we do in the future. And I mean, the reason I talk about this a lot, I think, is my Aberdeen experience and the Zero Waste Project that Aberdeen did. And I'm not taking the credit for this because it wasn't me that invented it, but it was one of the reasons I moved across the city was there was a much more, a large project, and the plan for dealing with it was joined up. So here's what we're going to deliver a service to everybody in the city, doesn't matter what type of household they live in, therefore that will be this. Fully commingled, only way to do that. In order to do that, we then need to build the infrastructure to sort and treat that material. So let's do that. And then behind that came the energy from waste facility, which I'm now involved in. So that all of that together enabled that to happen. And when that happened in Aberdeen, the recycling rate went up by over 11% in 18 months. you know, there you go. The evidence is right there. It's possible. It can be done. You know, there are questions, and people will talk about glass included, glass not, and I'm, you know, content that there's more work to be done on what the actual model is. But the fundamental principle of that is proven, and it does work, and it can be replicated. But we need to just think a little differently.
See, I agree totally. My thought on this whole thing is we're actually lying to the public. So we're telling the public, I don't know what your recycling rates are in Aberdeen at the moment are, but say it's 50%. That is not what's been recycled at the doorstep. What's been recycled at the doorstep is probably nearer 35%.
Yeah.
Because that 50% is including your bring sites, your household waste recycling sites. I mean, you actually think about it, you know, recycling 35% of the doorstep across Scotland is actually pretty poor. You know, and that is then backed up by, you know, the waste compositional work we do, where 70% of that bin shouldn't actually be in that bin. So, you know, I think there's a bit of a thing saying to the public, actually, you're not doing this very well. There's room for improvement here. You know, frame it positively, but, you know, say that, you know, this is what we could do. And for some reason, we don't seem to be even going near that potential financial saving, and back to the carbon thing, the saving in terms of the environment, which are pretty significant.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that. I totally agree. I think that whole much more transparent look at what is actually happening at the household level and at the doorstep, I think that might, you know, I don't know why we haven't done this yet, and I'm hoping that will still occur, because I think it badly needs to be done. Otherwise, we're going to possibly start throwing money at the wrong things, and that's the last thing we all need. And as you say, from the householder's point of view, if we're not pretending, the recycling rate is 50%, if it is 50%. However, if people then feel that they're appeased that that's okay, then I don't need to do any more, because the reality is at the doorstep it's much less than that. You're spot on.
Yeah. And then you throw into the mix the recycling rates, the contamination rates that the recyclers are building up, and you go on the SEPA website, look at that data, and it's 20-25% contaminated.
Yeah.
You know, so when we are recycling, we're getting it badly wrong as well. You know, so it's
there's lots to do.
There's a challenge, lots of work to be done here.
There is. There definitely is. So I'm sure we'll get there.
But I like that one. That was a good magic wand one. So we have myself and Alicia have got plans for all these magic wand ones for December, haven't we, Alicia?
Yeah, we do.
We've got a wee cunning plan.
Yeah.
Excellent.
For that. So I think that's my last question. I think it's over to you, Alicia.
Yeah, so one final question. So kind of leading on for that, obviously talking about the public and obviously making a change and that kind of thing. If there was someone sitting listening to this just now and they thought, I would really like to make a change and get involved in the waste industry, and they maybe wanted to follow a similar career path to yourself, or get involved in this industry, how would you advise them to get started, and where would you tell them to look? Where would you say is the best kind of starting point?
Well, given that my
PE teacher.
Follow your dream and then do something else. I suppose, you know, I'm a local authority board through and through. So although I have lots of contacts and lots of people that I've met along the way, and that's been fantastic. I think getting in at the ground is actually a really good way to do something and get your hands dirty, get involved wherever that might be, and get out there and meet people. I think the one thing I would say that has helped me further my career over the last few years, decades, has been developing that network of contacts. I mean, there are people I've met along the way who are now very, very good friends of mine, and people who have helped me develop and answered questions and allowed me to bang my head against the wall from time to time. So getting out and about, attending and networking events, meeting people, talking to people, going to see stuff, I think there's no substitute for going to see stuff. Some of the highlights of the job are site visits, or getting your wellies on and going and have a look at what's going on and who's doing what. It's definitely the way to do this. Is not a desk-based job on the whole. So get out there and get to know what happens.
Okay, yeah, that's really good advice.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we've exhausted our extensive list of questions with you. So unless you've got anything else to tell us.
No, I think you've probably heard enough from me. So
probably
thank you very
interrogated
much.
you much. Interrogated you enough. Well, thank you very much for your time. Very, very much appreciated. And good luck with your new role. So,
Yeah,
well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
both.
you, Pam.